So I said about last time how I'd worked at a J.C. Penney. Sorry that I'm just trying to get this done because if you try to like make a book or if you try to make a book or if you try to make a wait. If you try to make a book, if you try to make a painting, if you try to do whatever, right? It's like archaeology. It's like archaeology in reverse. If you try to make a book, if you try to make a painting, if you try to make a theory, it's like a theory in reverse, right? Or it's like archaeology in reverse. If you try to make a book or a painting, it's archaeology in reverse. And archaeology is digging up what was to come to a conclusion. Whereas like if you're making a work of fiction, so to speak, or theory, which is a little bit kind of like a fiction, a fic, a fac, faceo, facere, a made thing, like I probably have the Latin wrong, but a made thing. Then you're trying to condense upon a truth versus to like reveal a truth. Yet if you're making a fiction, you're trying to reveal a truth. But it might be a truth of the future. All art is a kind of prophecy. Yet there are also prophecies of the past. People talk about the prophecies of the future. But there are also prophecies of the past. Because history doesn't touch all the bases. Or if history are the bases, prophecy, so to speak, is the players. The bases are a very small part of the field. That's history. Prophecy to the future or the past is the players in the entire stadium. Right? All right. Beloved. Beloved Toni Morrison, beloved Oprah Winfrey, beloved 2 Peter 3:8. It's not like I memorized this shit, I looked it up on Google earlier. Beloved, remember this one thing. I'm paraphrasing. All English translations are paraphrasing, right? Beloved, remember this one thing. Jesus always spoke in parables. So, if I still got you, to the mathematicians I'd say parables. Not a parable, not a parabola. A parable is a parabola. The negative in the negative, right? Or the negative in the positive. The y equals x squared. But like, what y and what x? What A and what B. This is for the mathematicians. I'll get into other stuff later. I'm not that good of a mathematician, but at least that speaks to something. That it's parables. That it's parabolas. And of course, well, depending on how you make your A, because some A's are just like a little C with a line, but other A's of back in the day, of the Shakespearean age, Shakespearean, is the A with like, it's kind of like a backwards R with a C at the bottom. And if you flip that upside down, it's an E. Anyway, parables, parabolas. Anyway, before I get to that, what I was gonna say is that, no, I gotta talk to the mathematicians first, because we need you. Because the mathematicians are rationalists. And it's reasonable that parables and parabolas right? A parable is a story. Parables is stories. Parabolas aren't just y equals x squared. It's like every y equals every x squared. So, and it depends on the way that you make your a and your b. Now, if your a and your b's are real numbers, that's one series of, so to speak, parabolas. I mean, how do you even divide real numbers? How would you make an array of real number a and b parabolas that in any way made any sense, that wasn't just like a perfect solid? And contemplate a perfect solid, I dare you, because it's the same thing as contemplating a perfect vacuum, which is the same thing as contemplating eternity. I already know this is gonna take a few videos. Fuck it, who cares? Maybe several. But if you're talking about rational, and irrational or irrational, and it's awful to call, or rather, rational including imaginary. But anyway, imaginary numbers. This is for the mathematicians. I'll get back to the whole Peter thing, because that's the whole thing. Jesus always spoke in parables. He didn't speak in a parable. 2 Peter 3:8. Beloved! Toni Morrison, Oprah Winfrey. Beloved! Slavery. Remember this one thing. Peter, The Rock. I'll get to why it ain't necessarily The Rock, but kinda is, but kinda ain't, but. And it ain't because I know everything, it's because we live in the time of revelations. And I hate saying it, man. I hate saying it because it makes me sound big, but remember, the messenger ain't big. The messenger's just the messenger. The messenger's the bailiff. The messenger is the bailiff. The messenger goes where the judge, the jury, the prosecutor, and the defendant can't go. The bailiff goes everywhere in the courtroom. The messenger goes everywhere. The messenger is Hermes Trismegistus. The messenger is the Holy Ghost. And it's a difference between like a messenger and the messenger, right? But a messengers are super important. I hate saying this shit, man. But this is, this is the revelation. So, but this is for the mathematicians on the parabola, an array of parabolas, which has to do with conic sections and all that kind of thing. Never mind the specific kind of parabola of a spherical toroid, because conic sections really have to do with toroids. So that whole deal with like warping space, and actually what Eric Weinstein's coming out right now with geometric unity, and like where you're making like, I forget what physics force, but like where the derivative is a photon, like where you're taking the Cartesian grid and like curling it up a bit. That's the same thing as taking a conic section, because conic sections are like cones, right? But in a toroid, there's like that curved cone. There's that curved cone in a toroid, right? And that's the exact same thing that Eric Weinstein is doing. So like that whole shit with what the Greeks were doing with conic sections is trying to bring us closer and closer and closer to like that kind of conic, that trumpet. That trumpet shape in the middle of the toroid. Never mind a spherical toroid, the special case. What is that shape? Hook that up with the Marco Rodin stuff, But an array of parabolas. So Jesus always spoke in parabolas. So to the mathematicians, I'd say, are your a's and b's of your y, like if your y equals x squared, and then or your ay equals bx squared, if your a's or b's are real numbers or rational numbers, how does that whole thing go? And what if they're fractions? And what base system are you using? And that's the importance of Ethiopia, which has to do with Ethiopian mathematics, which is there's only one video I found on the entire fucking YouTube that has anything to do with fucking the truth of it mathematically, and it's such a nice, simple, kind video. There are kids in the class. It's like, and it's about how the whole Ethiopian math system is based upon binary. But not only that, how it's based on binary as we know it, but that how it can be used to calculate any base. It can be used to transfer from any base system to any base system. Again, this is for the mathematicians. Alright? So, if you do understand that much, and you still think I'm horseshit, fine. If you don't understand that much, and you still think I'm horseshit, I'm just the messenger, man. I'm a proxy. I say certain things that aren't said in public, right? When one general sends a message to another general via a messenger, never mind if it's in code, things are being said that aren't printed in the newspaper, right? So I have to forgive myself for being so presumptuous, for saying things that others might not say, and the reason why I have to do that is because I'm not that important. I'm not the president. You know, I'm not the general, I'm not the emperor. I'm not the soldier. I'm just a messenger. Jesus always spoke in parables. Not a parable, parables. Every time he opened his mouth, it was a parable. 2 Peter 3:8. Jesus always spoke in parables. Always. How many times? Always. Okay. Important. So, and that has to do with the word. So a parable is two things. Parables is an array of two things. It's not a dialectic, necessarily. And once again, it's not just a y equals x squared thing, because if you take a y equals 1 over x thing, never mind your a and your b, and you tilt that inverse, if you take that planar inverse formula and tilt it, and lens it, alright, I have to remember what this video is about. This video is about This video is about the Bible code and why this is the apocalypse, right? This is the apocalypse because this is the revelation, and not the apocalypse as the like Armageddon end of times, beginning of time, or the end of time as we know it, the end of the world as we know it. It's the revelation when all things will be revealed. And when people talk about like this and that and what the Bible said, this and that and whatever, it's like, yeah, it said that. And if you take it word for word, fuck it, you know? However you take it, it only matters if you take it from the standpoint of the end point, not even the end point, but the node of revelation, which is when all things will be revealed, which is now. Okay, right, so I've had something to drink, so I'm like drunk, right? But I hope to be reasonable in the word, because you can be drunk in the word even as sober. I know this for a fact. I talked last time about when I worked at JCPenney. I worked at a JCPenney that's now a COVID, you know, the National Guard are there and all that, fire department, all that, giving shots. I haven't got mine yet. But anyway, when I worked there, I remember I was having a smoke out on my smoke break back when I was making like $300 every other week. It was I got paid every 2 weeks, $300 every 2 weeks, man. What the fuck do you do with that now? Granted, I didn't work very hard, but at the same time, it's like, what the fuck? Anyway, there were some women there. It was usually there weren't many people out smoking, but that particular day there were quite a few women out there smoking with me and out back by kind of by the loading docks. Not quite, but there's this like little place where people used to smoke, and like they were talking about kids, this, that, whatever, and I remember I was just saying like, I can't afford a kid, or you know, that's just usually what I'd say when people brought it up, but also like there kind of other reasons, you know, but like I always thought too a lot about like orphans and stuff, and like me and my dad didn't always see eye to eye. Sometimes we did, but like my dad was, some people would call him my stepdad, but he adopted me, you know, like my mom married a man who wasn't my biological father, but he's the only dad I ever knew, you know, and like, and definitely my parents couldn't afford me and my brother, man, yet they fucking made it happen. I'm a fucking mess. My brother turned out okay, so 1 out of 2 ain't bad, you know, but you know, in the spirit of St. Thomas, second chances and lost causes, lost to be found, is that I contribute something before my final end, you know. That's really all that matters. Anyway, after I said that about how I couldn't really afford it or whatever, one of the women was like, if you wait till you can afford it, you can never have a child. And I was like, oh, and one of the other women was like, yep, you know, they're like, if you can't wait till you can afford it, you'll never have it, you know. And that's what has to do with making these videos, because spiritually the child is that idea, that inspiration, right? Because we can have feelings and we can have thoughts, but when a thought and a feeling merge in that like sweet, that's a child, spiritually or intellectually or symbolically, right? And there are levels to that, but you know, symbolically, spiritually, metaphysically, occult, what would be the right word, like hidden, occult, anyway, like the symbolic nature of like a child. One of the symbolic natures, meanings of the child is like, you know, someone who, yeah, that feel, where the feeling and the thought merge. That's like a spiritual child. That's a message, right? That's something to be nurtured. Maybe we don't present it to the world like right off. It's something to be held and nurtured. So like, I have a child, I'm nurturing it, right? But anyway, if I waited to make this video, I might never make it. If I waited to make it perfect, I might not make it. I need to make some shit perfect. Some children, right? There are different type of children. Some children come out of the womb and they're like, let's go. You know? A deer comes out of the fucking womb running. You know? Human children need a little more time, you know? So some of our inspired feelings need nurturing, and others need to get the fuck out right now and run. Anyway, the one thing I wanted to say about, part of the code that I broke down today, not that it, see, that's the thing too, it's not my code and it's not my breakdown, it's just, I'm here at the end of this long line of history in the entire cosmos and universe, of the, somewhere between the Bible and my phone. Somewhere between there, right, is the revelation. Anyway, when people talk about the timeline in the Bible, I thought I'd give this for a gift. Hold on. Speaking of the Bible, in a sense, this is a little bit like a free-form ritual, right? So if we're talking about Iamblichus, where he defends rituals, this might be the type of thing he's really defending. A Melchizedekian ritual. No followed format. Improv. Jazz. Dear beautiful jazz musicians, please forgive me for including myself in any way with your genre. Anyway, beloved, remember this one thing. Jesus always spoke in parables. Not a parable. Every time he opened his mouth, parables spewed out. Every time he said a word, not just another word, not just one symbol, but a perfect geometric array of parables spewed out in a harmonic, a musical, as a descendant of David, of the musicians, of the, Beatus Weir, to the musicians. An array of chords. Alright. I know I'm getting worked up. Bring this one with me. Leave the bread over there. Anyway, what I was gonna say was, so far as the Bible code goes, I'm trying to remember. I looked it up. It's not like I'm not good at this stuff. I don't memorize it, but like I'm kind of tuned in to the big picture. So so that was wait, I think I'm confusing 2 Peter 3:8. Yeah, I'm confusing 2 Peter 3:8 and Matthew 13:34. Maybe it was Matthew 13:34 that was about the parables, and Peter 2:3:8 is one day is is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day, is as one day. Now, if you take all that Old Testament shit up to the New Testament, so far as back, how old is the world according to the Bible? Now, this is where Jews really got to get on board, right? Now, I'm not a Catholic, I'm not this, I'm not that. I was raised in children's Bible, hodgepodge Protestant Christianity, right? But it's those types of dark sayings. What are dark sayings? Dark sayings are like the things that we know. Like just little sayings in our mind that we use. You know, takes money to get money. What goes around comes around. That, you know, what goes around comes around is a dark saying. Those are dark sayings, right? Those are parables. So yeah, no, I'm totally like, you know, like that lyric, life is not, I'm not saying life isn't a mystery to me anymore. Life is a huge fucking mystery. But historically speaking, that's different. Even if you figure out shit in history, the mystery still lives, right? But anyway, what I was gonna say about the Old Testament. The Old Testament, New Testament, and the day Peter, it's either Peter or Matthew 13:34 or Peter 2:38. A day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. Well, when people calculate how old the world is, according to the Old Testament, you're in the 5,000 year range, right? Depends how you define numbers. But you're looking about in the 5,000 year range, or 6,000 year range, right? If you cramp it back to 7,000 years, if you put it between about 5 and 5,000, if you put the history of the world according to the Bible, depending on how you define numbers, depending on if you're in base 10 or base 12, and how that changes things, like when you see 1,000, 1000, if that's in base 10 or base 12, you know, and all that kind of thing. Never mind base 8, which goes back to the east with the Magi's. You know, because 8's big in the east and all that, but because 8, 64, all that. But like, if you take the days as 1,000 years, beloved, remember this one thing. Says Peter, the founder of the biggest religious organization the world has ever known, says, remember this one thing, then maybe we ought to remember it. I'm just saying, you know, is days as 1,000 years, 1,000 years is a day, right? But also 1,000 used to be used as just kind of like a big number word, but we'll 1,000 is the way we say like a gazillion. It's just like some you know, it just means a lot. Sometimes 1,000 just means a lot. But anyway, if we take it just as 1,000, right? Or thereabouts, give or take. Base 10, base 12, base 8. Put it in that range, right? Of a 1000, 1000, and like base 8, base 10, base 12. In that range, right? And so it's like, you know, somewhere between like 5,000 and like, or like 5 million, somewhere in the neighborhood of between like 5 and 7,000 years old, according to the Bible, right? But that's 5 or 7,000 years old, where every day is as 1,000 years. So then, if we take that 5 to 7,000 years and take every day of that 5 to 7,000 years and make it 1,000 years, then where we end up is right in the crux of the Cambrian explosion. And before that and after it. And basically, I guess my contention symbolically, and this is quite something coming from Peter the illiterate fisherman 2,000 years ago. It's quite something, because roughly speaking, almost as roughly speaking as the geometers that we herald, Aryabhat and Ptolemy and so on and so forth, like these people we herald as being great mathematicians and logicians of the past. Then you have Peter, this stupid fucking dumb poor fisherman. And I'm not even saying that the Catholic Church of today is Peter's church. I'll tell you why in a minute. You're gonna love this shit. But like, a day is as 1,000 years. 1,000 years is as a day. If the Bible says the earth is roughly 5 to 7,000 years old, and if we make every day of that 5 to 7,000 years 1,000 years, you end up somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.6 billion years ago to, I don't know, somewhere in the 1 point something billion years ago. In that time on the earth, let me tell you what happened in that time period of the earth. I mean, roughly speaking, you get in around the Cambrian explosion at about the base 8. If you have base 8, 100 time period, what you come into is when there was an oxygen explosion in the world, pre-Cambrian explosion. I forget the name of the area of the period. I've mentioned it before like once, but I can't remember. I don't know this shit, but I just look it up, and there it is, That's when oxygen came about, right? So anyway, between the 5,000 and 7,000 years ago, if each day was as 1,000 years, what you come up with is the creation of the eukaryotes and the creation of the prokaryotes. You come up with single-celled and multi-celled organisms. That's one thing. You also come up with oxygen. And in some sense, you come up, and with oxygen, what happens with oxygen, because before oxygen, right, so you get like the birth of bacteria, you get the birth of chlorophyll, you get the birth of photosynthesis, you get eukaryotes, such as the Eucharist, and you get prokaryotes, right? But then and then there's some part of like Genesis where it's like separating the waters from the waters. This is a little bit disconnected, but not really, because everything up to the Cambrian explosion is day one. I shouldn't say everything after. The Cambrian explosion is kind of like day 2, right? But like separating the waters from the waters. What's the meaning from that? See, this is how easy it is sometimes, because you just have to say, what are waters and waters? Fresh water, salt water. Simple as that. Simple as that. Fresh water, salt waters. God separated from the waters from the waters. And what does that mean? Do you want to go swimming in the middle of a lake? Do you want to go swimming in the middle of a, like, there's pretty much no lake or river on a nice day. There's no lake or river you couldn't swim in and be safe. So long as you can swim, so long as nothing weird happens, you can swim in the middle of any lake or any river and be safe. You swim in the middle of the ocean, it's almost guaranteed that, I mean, you're not safe without knowledge. If you have knowledge, you're safe. Knowledge beyond knowing how to swim. Right? Something's gonna eat you. Separating the waters from the waters. Fresh waters from salt waters. Right? We drink fresh water. Our blood is salt water, or at least most of us. The mouth, the word. But yeah, so that whole thing comes into like bacteria, because then you get in multicell, then you get into like, you know, bacteria and all that kind of thing. And then, well, eukaryote, prokaryote. And that has to do with, that also on a subatomic level has to do with like bosons and fermions, as so far as bacteria go. Anyway, I want to hear that again. And that has to do with like the Old Testament and the New Testament, because if you're talking on day one, pre-Cambrian explosion, then you're talking about the unleavened bread, because there's no, well, that has to do with the difference between yeast and bacteria. But anyway, the oxygen explosion happened like pre Cambrian explosion. Flat bread, right? So we associate, I mean, obviously if there's an oxygen explosion, then there's a carbon, like you can't have carbon dioxide without oxygen, right? So the oxygen explosion is the carbon dioxide explosion. And so far as separating the waters from the waters, like the salt water, lactic, sourdough, the flatbread, because the Old Testament is unleavened bread. Unleavened bread, which means there was no carbon dioxide, which could be associated with there's no oxygen of the oxide. There's plenty of carbon, no oxygen. So you need the oxygen explosion to get the carbon dioxide, the unleavened bread. The New Testament would be like Cambrian explosion. Or not just New Testament, but like the second day would be the Cambrian explosion. Man, this video is terrible. It sounds so much better in my mind. That's the trouble with trying to translate atemporality into temporality. But like the second day would be more like because of the bread and the wine, fermentation, and bacteria. So then you're dealing with carbon dioxide and oxygen. Then you're dealing with yeast and bacteria, and in that sense, types of scobies. But anyway, for what it's worth, if you look into all that, check it out. It doesn't come up much that the whole deal is that Peter 2:3-8, Matthew 13:34, always parables. A day is as 1,000 years, 1,000 years is as a day. Depends on what you mean by 1,000, but we'll use that as a rough estimate, the way we know it. And it actually kind of works out in so much as that's when that relative time period is when life emerges. And so if we take each day logarithmically, because for instance, like the Richter scale is logarithmic, as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. But also there are 7 days of creation. So if we take the entire timeline of history logarithmically, then that brings you closer to like from the age of creation to the Cambrian from the Big Bang to the Cambrian explosion. That's day 1. And day 2 starts at the Cambrian explosion and goes to I don't know. 5.5 million years ago, whatever. But if each day is logarithmic, that's a different story, right? It actually kind of meets up, not so bad. At least in a rough correlation, right? That's pretty good.